Hello everyone and welcome back. I've got my book and as you can see I've got my therapy buddies with me. So shall we begin? If you remember, we were about to start chapter 3. Very early in life, every child concludes, I'm not okay. He makes a conclusion about his parents also, you're okay. This is the first thing he figures out in his lifelong attempt to make sense of himself and the world in which he lives. This position, I'm not okay, you're okay, is the most deterministic decision of his life. It is permanently recorded and will influence everything he does because it is a decision. It can be changed by a new decision. Wait, sorry, I read that wrong. Because it is a decision. No, wait, I did read it right, but we're going to go again. It is a decision. Because it is a decision, it can be changed. See, I understand in her head, but as I'm reading it doesn't come out right. So let's do this one more time, alright? Because it is a decision, it can be changed by a new decision. Not until it is understood. Now, am I understood in that? Yes, even though I should have really said, do I understand? But I was trying to put the word understood in. Puns were never really my strong point. In order to support these contentions, I wish to devote the first part of this chapter to an examination of the situations of the newborn, the young infant, and the grown child, in both the proverbial and verbal years. Many people insist they had a happy child and concluded nothing like I'm not okay, you're okay. I believe strongly that every child concludes it, happy childhood notwithstanding. First, I wish to examine the situation of his entry into life, and to point to the evidence that the events of this birth and his infant life are recorded, even though they are not remembered. In this connection, we note again Penfold's conclusions that the brain performs 3 functions: recording, recalling, and reliving. Although recall from the earliest period of life is not possible, we have evidence that we can and do relive the earliest experiences in the form of returning to the feeling state of the newborn infant. Because the infant cannot use words, his reactions are limited to sensations, feelings, and perhaps vague, archaic fantasies. His feelings are expressed by crying or by various body movements that indicate either distress or comfort. His sensations and fantasies, though ineffable because of his wordlessness at the time they were recorded, do replay occasionally in dreams in later life. To illustrate, a patient reported a dream that had recurred throughout her life. Each time she had this dream, she awoke in a state of extreme panic, with rapid heartbeat and heavy breathing. She struggled to describe the dream, but she could not find words for it. In one attempt at description, she said she thought she felt as if she were just a tiny little small speck, and big, huge, round cosmic things were swirling around me, like giant spirals getting bigger and bigger, and threatening to engulf me, and I just seemed to disappear in this vast, enormous thing. Though her report was accompanied by observation about losing her identity, the nature of the extreme panic would seem to indicate there may have been a fear of losing her life, as a primary biological reaction to the threat of death. Are you with me so far, people? I hope so. Some time later, she again reported the dream. It was the first time she had dreamed it for about a year. She had been travelling, and she and her husband had eaten lunch in an outdoor restaurant with an atmosphere of a higher quality than the foods. She did not feel well when we returned to the hotel, so she laid down for a nap. She fell asleep. It was not long before she awoke in a panic of this same dream. She also had severe stomach cramps, which had me all doubled up in pain. That's in quotation marks, so that's a quote she's making. No recent event had been particularly anxiety-provoking, and the panic dream seemed to have some direct connection with the extreme primordial gut pain. The dream was still in the scroll, however she did report another sensation, the feeling that she was suffocating. Certain information about the patient's mother, turning the page, helped to suggest a possible origin of this dream. The mother, a large plump woman, had breastfed her children and had held to the idea there was no problem that eating would not cure. Her idea of well cared for children were well fed children. She also was an aggressive, domineering woman. We deduced, which is all we can do, that the dream had its origin in a time before the patient had words, since she could not describe the content. So what he's saying here is that obviously we do not know the true reason, but we can kind of guess the reasons by looking at certain things. May not know the actual thing, but if you look around it, you see stuff. It's kind of like a black hole in a way. You can't actually see the black hole, but you know it's there because you see what's around it. What was I? The association with the belly cramp suggested some connection with an early eating experience. The probability is that if, as an infant, the patient had had enough, or had had a full feeding and quit nursing, the mother would insist she have more. This was before the era of demand feeding. Fill up now, it will have to last you. Feelings of dream state sleepiness, suffocation and stomach cramps could have been present. The content, the small thing being engulfed by huge cosmic things, could have been a replay of the infant's perception of her situation, herself, the small speck, being engulfed by the huge round things, or the huge presence of the mother herself. This type of dream material lends support to the assumption that our earliest experiences, though ineffable, are recorded and do replay in the present. Another indication that experiences are recorded from the time of birth is the retention of past gains. The infant's responses to external stimuli, although at first instinctual, soon reflect conditioned or learned experience. For instance, he learns to cook in the direction of his mother's footsteps. If all experiences and feelings are recorded, we can understand the extreme panic or rage or fear we feel in certain situations today as we live in of the original state of panic or rage or fear that we felt as infants. We can think of this as a replay of the original tape. To understand the implication, it is important to examine the situation of the infant. In reference to figure 7, we see a line representing a span from the moment of conception to the age of 5. The first block of time is the 9 months between conception and biological birth. During these 9 months, there occurred a beginning of life in the most perfect environment the human individual may ever experience. This way of life is referred to as a state of symbiotic intimacy. Okay. Then at biological birth, the little individual within the brief span of a few hours is pushed out into a state of catastrophic contrast, in which he is exposed to foreign and doubtless terrifying extremes of cold, roughness, pressure, noise, non-support, brightness, separateness, and abandonment. Now, before we carry on, there's a little figure here. It's called figure 7, and now I'm going to quickly show it to you. It'll be on the screen for a decent amount of time. So you got this for about 5 more seconds from now. That gives you enough time to look and pause it if need be. And that's your time. What's that? You didn't get a good look? Well, go back and pause it. Okay? Thank you for listening. The infant is for a short time cut off, apart, separate, unrelated. Common to the many theories about the birth trauma is the assumption that the feelings produced by this event were recorded and reside in some form in the brain. This assumption is supported by the great number of repetitious dreams of the drainage pipe, variety which so many individuals experience following situations of extreme stress. The patient describes a dream in which he is thrown from a body of water of relative calm into a sewer or drainage pipe. He experiences the feeling of increasing velocity and compression. This feeling also is experienced in the state of claustrophobia. The infant is found with overwhelming and unpleasant stimulations, and the feelings resulting in the child are, according to Freud, the model for all later anxiety. Within moments, the infant is introduced to a rescuer, another human being who picks him up, wraps him in warm coverings, supports him, and begins the comforting act of stroking. This is the point of psychological birth, as we saw in Figure 7. This is the first incoming data that life out there isn't all bad. It is a reconciliation, a reinstatement of closeness. It turns on his will to live. Stroking or repetitious bodily contact is essential to his survival. Without it, he will die, not physically, then psychologically. Physical death from a condition known as marasmus once was a frequent occurrence in foundling homes where there was a deprivation of this early stroking. There was no physical cause to explain these deaths except the absence of essential stimulation. This painful on-again, off-again keeps the infant in a constant state of disequilibrium. During the first 2 years of life, he does not have conceptual thinking tools, words, to construct an explanation of his uncertain status in his world. He is, however, continually recording the feelings which grow from the relationship between himself and others, primarily mother. And these feelings are directly related to stroking and non-stroking. Whoever provides stroking is okay. His estimate of himself is unsure because his okay feelings are transitory and continually being replaced by not okay feelings. Finally, the uncertainty convinces him, I'm not okay. At what point does the child make his final decision as to the position, I'm not okay, but you're okay? Piaget, or Piaget, I'm guessing that's a French name. I'm going to call him Piaget. Gotta go with something. On the basis of meticulous observation of infants and small children, believes that the development of causality begins in the early months of life and is acquired by the end of the second year. In other words, data, in the form of a jumble of impressions, begins accumulating in certain sequential patterns, to a point where a proverbial precision or conclusion is possible. Piaget says, in the course of the first few years of childhood, the evolution of sensory motor intelligence and also the correlative elaboration of the universe seem to lead to a state of equilibrium, bordering on rational thought. I believe this state of equilibrium, evident at the end of the second year or during the third year, is a product of the child's conclusion about himself and others. His life position. Once his position is decided, he has something solid to work with, some basis for predictability. Piaget says that these early mental processes are not capable of knowing or stating truths, but are limited to desiring success or practical adaptation. If I'm not okay and you're okay, what can I do to make you, an okay person, be good to me, a not okay person? I'm still trying to work that one out in my life, I'll be honest with you. This position may seem unfavourable, but it is a true impression to the child, and this is better than nothing. Thus, the state of equilibrium, the adult in the little person has achieved its first mastery in making sense of life, in solving what Adler called life's central problem, the attitude towards others, and what Sullivan called the self-attitudes which are carried forever by the individual. One of the clearest statements on the development of positions is made by Cuby, otherwise known as Ellis Cuby. And he states, or she, or I'm going to call them they, because I don't know their gender. It is possible to make one certain deduction, namely that early in life, sometimes within the earliest months and sometimes later, a central emotional position is frequently established. The clinical fact which is already evident is that once a central emotional position is established early in life, it becomes the effective position to which that individual will tend to return automatically for the rest of his days. This in turn may constitute either the major safeguard or the major vulnerability of his life. In fact, the establishing of a central emotional position may turn out to be one of the earliest among the universals in the evolution of the human noetic process, since it may start even in the pre-verbal and largely pre-symbolic days of infancy. Whenever the central position is painful, the individual may spend his whole life defending himself against it, again using unconscious, preconscious, and unconscious devices whose aim it is to avoid this pain-filled central position. Kubi then raises the question, As to whether or not these positions are alterable later in life, I believe they are, and I hope they are too. Although the early experiences which culminated in a position cannot be erased, I believe the early positions can be changed. What was once decided can be undecided. And with that, people, we're going to call it a night. Because, well, it's not good to read too much at one time. And I find these videos are better when they're in shorter bursts. So until next time, people, please look after yourselves. Remember to always take care. And also, why not watch one of these videos up on the screen right now? You'd be doing me a solid if you did. You really would. Right, bye.